Hello, my name is Genesis Anderson, a student at the University of Memphis. I'm currently working on my doctoral degree in urban educational leadership and policy studies. And for my seminar in educational leadership class, I'm reviewing The Privileged Poor: How Elite Colleges Are Failing Disadvantaged Students by Anthony Abram Jack. So first, let's meet the author. Here's Mr. Jack. He is a junior fellow at the Harvard Society of Fellows. He's also the assistant professor of education at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. Also a Schuster assistant professor at Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Study. He's also a sociologist and researcher. He works to document the overlooked diversity among lower income undergraduate students. He received his bachelor's degree from Amherst College, where in women's and gender studies and religion. He graduated cum laude in 2007. He received his PhD in sociology from Harvard University in 2016 and distinguishable awards in graduate school and received distinguishable awards in graduate school. His first book, which can be found on the curriculums of colleges nationwide, The Privileged Poor, Jack offers real, actionable advice to schools that will exacerbate the burdens that place on disadvantaged students simply for being poor and possibly of color on a majority rich and white campus. For this book, Jack had to conduct in-depth ethnographic study of campus life for 2 years to investigate what it is like to be a student at the synonymous renowned university, an elite, wealthy, white university in Northeast. Assuming that students' experiences are similar amongst all students attending elite colleges nationwide, he categorized groups of students in three different categories: upper income, the privileged poor, and doubly disadvantaged. Jack interviewed over 100 Black, white, and Latino undergraduates to take part in the study. Here are just the definitions of the three groups of students that he's interviewing for the study. Two groups, the doubly disadvantaged and the privileged poor, are both come from lower incomes. The doubly disadvantaged are students who enter college from local, typically distressed public high schools. On the other hand, the privileged poor, same disadvantage as far as how they grew up, but these students attended high school serving a majority of upper income students, such as prep schools, private schools, boarding schools, etc. The upper income are students who do not receive financial aid. Usually one or both of these parents have graduated from college. Just as a side note, there's a typo for the upper income students. One or both of their parents have graduated from college and they receive no financial aid when they are in college. One of the book's key insights is that the treating of poor students as a homogeneous group leads to undifferentiated practices that end up failing our students in the long run. Jack goes above and beyond and separates the doubly disadvantaged from the privileged poor as they have two different experiences, specifically on elite campuses. He arrived at this insight by reflecting on his experiences as a first-generation college student. He had the privilege of attending Gulliver Prep his last year, for 1 year, and so he classifies himself as a privileged poor. And he noticed that his experiences were different than that of a few of his peers. Upon comparison, he realized that he was ahead of the game and keenly aware of the hidden curriculum that proved to be invisible to some other disadvantaged students like himself. Jack seeks to unveil that curriculum for his readers, for other colleges, and for all. Before jumping into the specifics of the book, let's talk more about these three groups. If you look at the diagram, it's an accurate visual of the relationship between these groups. The doubly disadvantaged and the privileged poor have something in common, and so the privileged poor and the upper income students, they have things in common. Specifically, the doubly disadvantaged, when they arrive on campus coming from a whole new world to an elite university, they tend to struggle with culture shock of studying and living alongside extremely wealthy peers. They also struggle with navigating the complex bureaucracies of financial aid, course registration, and academic advising. The privileged poor, however, they have had experiences in prep school and boarding schools, so they're sort of prepared and they're ready for what's to come as they've had practice doing so. So they've experienced their culture shock just a bit earlier than that of the doubly disadvantaged. So the privileged poor come to campus and they navigate college campuses swiftly and which allows them to overcome some, but not all, of the institutional and social barriers that lower income students usually face. Now, the upper income students, who most closely fit the description of the typical elite college student, these students face almost no barriers to successful participation and integrate into campus life successfully. There were 3 essential chapters within this book. However, the book starts with the introduction, then goes into chapter 1, then 2, then 3, and then has a conclusion. The first chapter is called Come With Me to Italy. Second, Can You Sign Your Book for Me? And third, I Too Am Hungry. Each of these quotes signifies a specificity of the chapter and the general purpose that Jack was trying to relate to his readers. In the introduction, however, Jack started, of course, with his life experiences and drew readers in by showing how his motivation that prompted this type of research. He then goes on to state the stats of how colleges were in the past were not diverse and served a very low population of lower income students, making money a huge factor. So that caused more. They showed the process of policies and how they began to unfold and how colleges were creating no loan financial aid, and showed how students can come onto campus, removing money as one of the barriers. He even quoted one administrator to say that they hope that all these policies are so that no student, that money won't be a barrier for any student to attend their elite college. In the first chapter, Come With Me to Italy, said so casually and common in the ears of the upper income, but shockingly to lower income students, if they were to hear those very same words, were just about relationships, the experiences of the relationships between students and peers on campus, and how just those experiences alone were different. So something he calls conversations, where I give an example of once he was in the elevator with a group of young ladies, and they were just talking about their spring break and how they were able to attend. They were able to go on vacation or for their summer go on vacation, and he coming from a lower income didn't view summer that way. Summer was just another break from school, usually hot, but definitely not seen as a vacation, where with the same privileges for that upper income students got to attend and got to partake in. Can You Sign My Book for Me was the second chapter. It hit on those student, teacher, adult relationships and how upper income and privileged poor easily navigated relationships, and they knew to put themselves out there, and that it's good to ask questions. Opposite of that, of the lower income, doubly disadvantaged students. So doubly disadvantaged students were timid, and they would come on timid to build relationships and didn't understand terminology such as office hours, which were terms that's just brand new to them, as their secondary structures didn't prepare them for this type of atmosphere and this type of world. Which the privileged poor, even though they're from the same communities, they had experienced not as much as upper income students. They had the same experiences as upper income in school spaces, where they knew how to build those relationships and understand the benefits of those type of relationships, as they can help them in their career goals and get further with awards on campus, and not just with professors, but also with each other. I Too Am Hungry was the third chapter of the book. It definitely hit on and brought us close, and brought the doubly disadvantaged and privileged poor closer together, as the first two chapters show their separations. As, for instance, if you think about the policies on campus about how colleges were doing all this to bring students to campus, but we're doing very little to maintain, to support them and maintain them while they were on campus. With the closing of cafeteria during spring break, upper income students, they had a place to go. It was assumed that every student had a place to go. Okay, so as I was saying, to that point of I Too Am Hungry, students went hungry during spring break because the food services cafeteria were closed, because colleges assumed that every student had a place to go home. And unfortunately for some students in the privileged, poor, and doubly disadvantaged, college was their refuge. They didn't have a place to go, and the meal plans that they were assigned, that was their only food source. And Jack talked about food insecurity in the United States, and how so many children suffer from this, not just those on elite spaces. So Jack gives some awesome advice to colleges and schools nationwide. As far as the food insecurity, he talks about leaving campuses open. So some colleges have not charged for the spring break. Some he's talked to the I can't pronounce the word, but the pseudonym renowned university about keeping cafeterias open during spring break. He's talked about curriculum changes and small things that professors can do, such as discussing common terminology that isn't that most doubly disadvantaged wouldn't be aware of, such as office hours, explaining what that means. So this book is important to read, and what I took from it as a middle school teacher, I wanted to figure out how can I, because I think I teach mostly doubly disadvantaged students. That my students will fall into that category. So I was trying to figure out that as a middle school teacher, what I could do. What are some of my takeaways from the book? So definitely, I agree with the changing of the curriculum to support students' social and emotional well-being. I believe that everything should be refocused to make students advocate for themselves more, which was another point in the book that doubly disadvantaged students really don't do. They rarely feel like they belong. So we should do more into showing them that they are here, and they deserve to be here, and wherever they are, they deserve to be there, regardless if someone helped pay for it or not. Because money, with this world being so capitalistic, everything revolves around money. So regardless, wherever they are, they deserve to be there. And if we can help them to see that, I think, for one, the world would be a better place. Our students would be a better place. And that would help them start to build on not just generational wealth, but generational knowledge they can carry on, and generational values they can carry on throughout their life and their families and so forth.